Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Massive Big 12 matchup. Kansas State heading on the road to play Colorado. Dill, Kansas State, your pick to win the Big 12 heading into 2024, going up against, I'm not going to say my Colorado Buffaloes, but a Colorado team that I was really high on heading into 2024. And I think the difference between this Colorado team is that, look, we all know Shedeur Sanders, Travis Hunter, two of the better players in all of college football. The national media talks about Colorado like they have the same personnel on defense that they had last year. Like they got difference makers specifically in the front seven. And I think you look at this game and say it's going to come down to Kansas State. They're going to want to run the football. Can Colorado stop it? Colorado's been solid against the run to start 2024, fired up to get into this one. Before we do, and as always, number one, let it fly in the comment section. Dill, 6-point spread. Kansas State, 6-point favorites on the road here. Would love to hear how you guys are feeling. Score predictions, just predictions for this game. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And Dill, I think we got to start with this Kansas State offense going up against this Colorado defense. I'll give you the floor here. Tell us on this Kansas State rushing attack.
I mean, it's tough to kind of evaluate where Kansas State's at because, frankly, you've gotten, I feel like, two different versions.
Yeah, a little bit of roller coaster.
I mean, he's had some really good games. Obviously, that game against Oklahoma State, I feel like you put it all together. The run game was clicking. The pass game was clicking. And it wasn't like he was making legit quarterback plays, like getting through his progression, being accurate with the ball down the field. And then you've obviously seen your BYU type games where it just really gets out of hand. And frankly, even in the Oklahoma State game, he throws one of those like really bad interceptions. And again, I think this game's going to be relatively high scoring. So that is probably your main concern. I kind of think Kansas State, with the multidimensionality of their rushing attack and passing attack, if Avery Johnson's on, can move it on Colorado. But I am a little worried about what he's going to do. If he turns the ball over, I just think that's where Colorado can really start to roll on teams, just like they did.
And game script is really important in this football game. Very similar to what you just said in terms of UCF. Like Colorado was able to get a lead early, kind of force UCF into having to throw the ball much more than they wanted to in the second half. You feel like if Colorado can take an early lead, again, Kansas State is struggled on the road a couple of weeks ago going to BYU. Like it's going to be a very similar environment. And so if you're Kansas State, you want to make sure you jump off to at least a good start so you're not kind of getting into that one-dimensional territory of just having to
I think you are right. At the end of the day, they're going to want to be able to run the ball. That's how they set everything up. They're really good off play action. They're good when Avery Johnson can get kind of outside the pocket. But all that is predicated on being able to run the ball. And if they get down quickly in Colorado, that is one thing that always scares you about playing them. If you make a couple of mistakes, they can really score quick. And that's obviously, I think they were able to put a lot of pressure on a handful of teams, or UCF.
UCF especially. Like UCF made some mistakes early, and you suddenly look up and say, all right, Colorado's got a 2-touchdown lead here. I think you're right. You look at this Kansas State offense, and you said we've seen two different versions. It really starts with the run game. Like if they're able to get the run game going, that's kind of how they get the passing game going. And so that seems to me like the biggest storyline. And kind of I'll sell Kansas State because I don't think you did a good job of it. I mean, you look at Avery Johnson. Yes, he's a very capable thrower of the football. Like people act like he can't throw. He's got some big time talent in the arm. But what he can do as an athlete, 17 carries of 10 plus yards. You look at DJ Giddens playing like one of the better backs, not only in the Big 12, but in the country.
Dylan, that's the one thing. Teams haven't really been able to run the ball the way DJ Giddens likes to run the ball on Colorado this year. So, again, I'm not sure they've seen a rushing attack.
RJ Harvey's pretty dang good, Dale.
No. First, well, I don't. Maybe they got smoked by Florida, but I think Kansas State's a step above from UCF. But I think even Colorado or Nebraska, I should say, had some moments where they ran the ball really well. But it's not like they just pounded them, especially in the second half. I feel like Colorado kind of answered the bell, if you will.
Let me look on this Colorado front seven. Like I really do think it's so much different than what you saw last year. Like I think it starts with Chidozie on the inside. And again, he was banged up for a couple of games early in this season, but I think all Colorado fans know when Chidozie's on the field, you don't necessarily see it in the box score all the time. You talk about eating up double teams, keeping your linebackers free. I think it starts with Chidozie. You have multiple edge rushers. I think Samuel Okunlola against the run has been an absolute hammer on the edge. But I think the story of this Colorado defense is the linebackers. Like Dill, our boy Nikhai Hill-Green, former Michigan man, He went to Charlotte, winds up at Colorado, didn't really play during the North Dakota State game, which made me scratch my head. He's got 15 run stops on the year. He doesn't miss tackles. This kid has been a revelation, I should say. I think that's the right word. Revelation for this Colorado defense. Levante Bentley has taken a step. So you look at this front seven and say, one, you got some legitimate difference makers, right? Deion Hayes, former second team all ACC guy. BJ Green, second team all Pac-12. Legitimate difference makers. You're deep. And now you got some really good linebackers playing behind that defense. And then I think most importantly, Cameron Sealman-Craig's coming up and making a ton of plays for Colorado in the run game.
And that's an important guy, I think, especially the way Kansas State likes to try to get the perimeter. Because obviously, like, they're going to throw in some of that option work. They went to some of that 2 running back set, which I really hope Kansas State goes to a lot. I think that can be really dangerous with the way Giddens can run in between the tackles, the way Dylan Edwards is really explosive on the boundary. And you obviously throw in Avery Johnson. So I think I like that they go to that set. I honestly think, and it's surprising to me, I'm a little surprised Colorado's pass defense. That's kind of what I'll be looking at, because I do think this might be one of the better passing attacks they'll see. Definitely not quite Nebraska, I don't think, but it's probably closer to Nebraska than anything else they've seen. And they did really, it felt like, struggle to contain that passing attack from Nebraska.
Yeah, I feel like the person, one, I think it's played better, but I think the personnel for Colorado in the secondary is really dang good, but they ask a lot of those second, like they are Cameron Sealman-Craig, again, the safety that we're talking about, he plays almost every single snap in the box. Like, they put their cornerbacks on islands. They pretty much beg teams to go test their cornerbacks. And yeah, they've given up some yards in the passing attack, but that's kind of how Colorado wants to play. Like, hey, go beat DJ McKinney and Travis Hunter, and if you can, good on you. There just hasn't been that many teams that
has some weapons, though. I feel like that's people sleep on with, like, okay, a lot of talk about Giddens and Edwards, but they have a good wide receiver core. I think they're pretty explosive. They did that especially against Oklahoma State. That was kind of their coming out party, if you will. They made a lot of plays down the field. And again, I feel like Colorado, like, their emphasis on stopping the run, you do sometimes get those. And Avery Johnson, I think, he's still got to hit them, because we've certainly seen him miss some of those throws, those layups that he's had. But if he's hitting them, I think they're really good in that wide, or really kind of underrated, I should say. They're not like Colorado good in the wide receiver room, but they're not a scrub team out.
Yeah. I think that's probably the storyline. Is I would predict that Colorado walks safety. You got Shiloh, I think, is coming back in this football game too. So you're probably walking your safeties a decent amount into the box and challenging Kansas State to win on the outside. So it's not only can Kansas State run the football, but can they win some matchups on the outside? Those are probably 2 question marks you're looking at. They're flipping the sides. I think one of the big things for Colorado the last couple of weeks, which has led to their a little bit more enhanced success on offense, is a little bit of a run game. And look, I'm not getting up here and saying, like, we got to run the football 70% of the time like Kansas State, but you do have to keep a defense honest. Like, it's only going to help in pass protection. If you can keep a defense honest in terms of what you can do running the football, it's going to help your offensive line in pass protection. They've been able to do that the last couple of weeks. The big storyline for me here is, can Kansas State win with rushing 4? Like, the one team, the one defense we really saw give Colorado some massive fits was Nebraska, because they could rush 4, get a ton of pressure, and drop 7 in coverage. Can Kansas State get after the passer like a team like Nebraska did? That's probably the question. And you look at Kansas State and say, this is a super solid defense, but it's not like they're elite getting after the passer like we've seen some previous Kansas State teams in the past.
But I think they can possibly confuse Colorado, because that's one thing I think you saw, and they've cleaned it up for sure. I think they've been much better picking up blitzes. The first couple games, especially that North Dakota State game, they brutally struggled being on the same page with each other.
Yeah,
I think they're starting to figure out who their starting 5 is, so that's starting to help. I think they're communicating better. I think they're in better positions. But Kansas State's a hard defense to kind of track where it's coming, because they'll send safeties, they'll send corners, and they'll send linebackers. They play kind of that 3-man down line, but they'll send them from anywhere.
A little bit similar to how Nebraska plays. Like the 3-3-5, we're going to give you a lot of different looks in the front. That's a big difference too.
Colorado, Nebraska had guys who could win one-on-one. Aside from Brendan Mott, I'm not sure Kansas State, like, that will be one of the things. And Kenna Tobio, Kenna Bates, some of those other guys in one-on-one matchups, because Nebraska was able to do that pretty consistently. I mean, they couldn't block like Ty Robinson.
It's probably the biggest storyline, because if you give Shedeur time in the pocket with the weapons he has on the outside, he's going to cut you up. You have to be able to get pressure with your front four. That's going to be the storyline of this football game, Dill. Let's get into the pick here. Kansas State on the road, 6-point favorites. Who you got?
Give me the Wildcats. You wanted to jump on me like, oh, you're Wildcats, so stupid. They're not going to win the Big 12.
I love Kansas State.
That's when you start to. Oh yeah, you didn't love them after the BYU game. I'm not sure you watched that, because I
panicked a little bit.
That got out of hand a little bit, and certainly like Kansas State's not really built to be behind by that many points quickly, so it did get out of hand. But like, this is still a really dangerous Kansas State team. I think their ability to hurt Colorado in a variety of different ways on offense, I think will give them a lot of problems. I think like Baylor scored a lot of points. Baylor is a really bad offense with that backup quarterback. I don't think they have a ton of ways to hurt you. I look at Kansas State, a lot of ways to hurt this Colorado team. And then, I mean, I think Colorado's going to score. I will say that. I've at Kansas State secondary been up and down, but I just think Kansas State play on their terms a little bit like Nebraska could.
Yeah, that's the question. And I kind of had a feeling, and to clarify to the Kansas State fans, like, yeah, I wavered a little bit. I wavered a little bit after that night in Provo, Utah. I like I think if you're Kansas State, you kind of had to know there'd be some growing pains. Like, you're going with a young quarterback who's a gunslinger who wants to be dynamic and make plays.
Can't have the growing pains this game though, because similar to how it got out of hand in Provo. If they can get the crowd into it, I'm sure it's going to be a raucous environment. Colorado scores too quick, so they better not be turning it over, else my prediction is.
Give me Rado here. And this is not an anti-Kansas State thing. I just feel like this is going to be a close game. I had a very similar take on the UCF game. Like, I think Kansas State and UCF have very similar kind of ways they want to run an offense. I think Colorado was able to commit bodies to the box, kind of take away that UCF rushing attack. I think they'll have a chance at doing that against Kansas State as well. And then, can you make Avery Johnson on the road beat you through the air? We'll see.
It's not a preposterously terrible defense either.
Yeah, I agreed with that. 100%. UCF's defense, not good at all.
That's not ideal when you're a running team to have that.
I think that's fair. I think this is going to be a fun one. I'm fired up for it. Give me Colorado's getting 6 points at home. I feel like this is a one-score game, like kind of like what I was used to. I don't know who's going to win, but I feel like it's going to be close. Give me Rado on the points here. Going to be a great game, Dill. We got to get our coffee, energy drinks ready for this one. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Talk to y'all later.